Hey YouTubers, welcome. This is a how-to on how to modify your Super Nintendo Classic Mini with an external USB drive. This is take two. Take one took a very long time. I made a few mistakes. Well worth looking through if you've got errors and issues. It might help out, but this is going to be very quick, straightforward. Going to try and keep it to 20 minutes tops. So we better get on with this thing and start quickly. So the first thing I'm going to take you to is the Super Nintendo. So let's boot it and show you the stock firmware. There is no boot screen, it's just black, and then in. We go up to the legal notices and notice that there is nothing to do with hack cheat right there. Come out, play a game, Mario, down and select, doesn't do anything. This is stock firmware. I don't want to prove it any further. We've got to keep this video relatively short. The last one was nearly 80 minutes, I think. Let's get back to the computer and see what we can do. First thing you need to do is say a big thank you to these guys: Cluster M, Kylan K, Mad Monkey, Dan the Man 827, B Parker 06, many more great people who have enabled this modification and who continue to work on improving it. The hardware you need, of course, you need the Super Nintendo Classic Mini. You'll also need a micro USB on-the-go adapter. It looks, I'm not sure if you can see it in the bottom left down there, it's a little L-shaped thing that I'm using. Other people have other types of on-the-go adapter with multiple leads coming out that can be used for mouse, keyboard, things like that. You'll also need some USB storage. I'm choosing to use a micro SD card and a USB adapter. I'm going to turn the light on just to see if we can get a bit of light on this. There it is. That's what I'm going to use. That will plug in to the micro USB L shape like that, and that'll go into the SNES Mini, and the power will go into the other side there. So that's the hardware that you need. In terms of software, one download, guys, really good. All you got to do, get yourself a GitHub, KMFD Manic. That's Kylan K, as far as I can see. Go there, download the package. It's updated frequently. The last one came out on, I think it was the 20th of November. No, 22nd of November, sorry. So that's a new one, has some additional features in there. It's great stuff. Part 2, that'll be coming later, but let's get part 1 out of the way. So the first thing we do back on the desktop here is we know we've got an unmodified Super Nintendo Mini, and we know we've downloaded from, let me bring this up. This is where you need to get the download from. This is that GitHub link. Go right to the bottom, click on the 7-zip, download it. I'll just zoom in a little bit there. There we go. Get that zip, put it on your desktop. Once you've got that zip and it's on your desktop, extract it. So here is the zip file, and I've extracted it there. So once you've done that, you can get rid of the 7-zip, put it into the recycle bin. Next thing you want to do is you want to open up this. I'll zoom in so you can see. There we go. So a lot of the modifications, my last video I didn't bother applying any of them. You're definitely going to have to apply a couple of them if you want to use your Super Nintendo to its full potential. So let's go in here into the dependencies and extras. Let's go into the advanced users, and let's take out of there the HackChi 2.21F. Copy that to the desktop, and let's also take the HackChi GUI Win32 official, and let's put that on the desktop as well. Let's extract each one of these folders. So first of all, the Dan the Man HackChi 2.2. I'm going to extract it to my desktop as a folder called HackChi 2. Careful how I spell that. There we go. And I'm going to put all of the contents from HackChi 2 into there. Good old Windows is going a little bit slow at the moment. I don't know what's happened. There we go. So that is the HackChi 2.21F by Dan the Man. that allows you to export games to USB. Very important. And that is the software that we'll use to do that export. We'll then get rid of the zip file. Again, just try and keep your kind of desktop clean while you're doing this. Then we're going to go for the Hakchi GUI, Win32 official. I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop. I'm going to call that Hakchi GUI. But I'm also going to label it USB, because that's pretty much all it does. It basically takes your Super Nintendo and adds that USB ability. Not much good on its own though, as you would have seen if you saw part 1 or take 1 of my video. So let's then take all the contents of that zip file and put them into that folder. 5 minutes already, that's not good. This video may go on for a bit longer than the 20. Okay. And we'll get rid of that zip file as well. So you're going to have two folders here that you're mainly interested in. Zoom out. Oh, that was probably okay. You're going to have the Hakchi 2 folder. Spelt it correctly, there we go. And you're going to have the Hakchi GUI USB folder. I can see that the brightness is a little bit too high there, so I will just lower that if I can. I had to switch over from my stock iPhone to an older iPhone to allow me to do this. Although it's just 1 second while I try and adjust the brightness here, the exposure. Doesn't appear to want me to do that, unfortunately, on this iPhone. I apologise, very much so, but let's see if we can get this video done anyway. So the first thing you want to do with your stock firmware is you want to launch Hakchi 2. It's been modified by Dan the Man. It will ask you what your device is. You should tell it. It should be an SNES USA Europe. Gives you a nice little welcome. Very important step. You want to dump your kernel. Yes, you do want to dump your kernel, because that is what you're going to use for the modification. Also, you need it to get back to factory if you really mess up here. So press reset, turn on the power on your Super Nintendo Mini, and make sure you dump that kernel. Once the Nintendo has entered fail mode, it'll dump it, and it's really important that you save this file. It'll be named kernel_SNES .img. I already have a copy of my kernel from multiple dumps in the past, but I'm just showing you how to do it from scratch. Okay, that's it dumped. It is your factory kernel. It's been saved. It tells you where it saves it to. Do not lose it. I've dumped mine many times before. So again, it's going to be here in the dump folder, right there. Kernel SNES.img. And mine, just for reference, is 2670 kilobytes in size. So next thing we'll do, we'll get back to Hakchi. Now, we're going to use Hakchi to modify the stock kernel with a few additional features. Now, to do that, I'm just going to minimize the command window there. We're going to open up the KMFD Manic folder, the one that's dated 11/22/17. Yours may be dated later, depending on when you've acquired it. Okay, and we're going to add some modules here. So the modules we're going to add, we definitely want to go into the dependencies and extras. We want to go to advanced users, and we're going to need the tiny 7Z dynamic HMod, and we're also going to need the font fix HMod. So I'm going to drag those two in there. When we do that, it asks us which ones we want to install. I'm going to say, yeah, we want to install these two. Click on OK. And it will upload the kernel. The tiny 7-zip dynamic HMod allows us to run compressed zip files on the external drive or on the SNES Mini. The good thing about that is it takes a lot less time to copy a lot of smaller files over to your USB than it does uncompressed ROMs, which you would have seen if you've seen my first video on doing this. The fontfix.hmod should allow you to display fonts that or font letters that weren't included with Nintendo's original font. For some reason it always pauses on this last section. So once it's done, if all we want to do is play Super Nintendo games, we can go ahead and start to flash the USB and transfer files over to the USB stick to play games from. But I don't think that's all we want to do here. I would recommend at this stage, you see, this is kind of like a point of no return, in that you're best putting all the modifications on there that you want before applying the USB patch. The USB patch is kind of like a final process that you go through before it gets locked down with all the mods. So far we've had the font fix and the tiny 7ZX dynamic HMod. I'm also going to come up to the dependencies and extras and go up again to the cores, and I'm going to copy all of these across and in there. I'm not going to add them all, I don't think. Although, I'm just wondering what's stopping me adding them all. You know what? I don't think there's anything stopping me adding all of these. I mean, why would they be put there if we can't? So let's do that. Let's add all of those. Never done this before, adding all of them like this, but let's give it a go. So all I did was drag all of the HMod files from the root of the KMFD Manic NESC, SNESC cores folder. I dragged all those into the Hakchi 2 window. My guess is I'll probably make some mistakes again with this because I'm kind of going off the beaten track in adding support for everything. Yeah. Clearly it didn't like that. Okay. So what I will do is I will just install the extra modules, what I definitely need. So let's start with some of these then. I want the RetroArch. Let me zoom in on this and bring it into view. Okay, hopefully you can see this here. So I'm going to put RetroArch on there because that will allow me to play NES games. I also want to look for something to play my Genesis games with. There's a KM_Genesis plus GX there. I'll make sure that's checked. I like to play N64 games occasionally, and there is a Glupin64, km_Glupin64, which I'll use. Also Pico Drive, km_Pico Drive. I'm going to use that because that plays 32X games. Wondering what else there is on here. I'm looking for something now to play SNES 9X. That will be good because there are some ROMs that just won't work with the Nintendo emulator. So let's put SNES 9X on there, 2010. I'm looking for something now to play Saturn. Yep, probably runs slow, but let's put something to play Saturn games on there. Just going through, seeing what else there is. Atari 2600 games, why not? Okay. So again, I'm just stepping through here, just looking for any PCSX Rearmed Neon. That appears to play PlayStation games. I'll take that as well. And there's one that runs quite a good selection of Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games. So that's the KM-MGBA. So in total, I have the following mods being applied. KM Genesis Plus GX mod, KM Glupin 64, KM MGBA, the KM PCSX Rearmed Neon, KM Pico Drive, KM RetroArch, which is the main RetroArch build with support for NES, KM SNES 9X 2010, KM Stella, and KM, I think it's Yabayuse, at least YABAUSE. Okay, I'm going to put them on. I'll just zoom out now so you can see that it's applying them. Now, I would hope that while it's putting these modifications on there, it's also applying the standard modification of a controller reset mod, which is down and select. Hopefully pressing those will reset the Super Nintendo. The important thing to do before applying the final USB modification is to make sure you've got your Super Nintendo as you would want it. Now, I'm not going to put any other games other than the 21 games that came stock on the internal memory. I'm going to keep those 21 games on the internal memory and put everything else on the external drive. Okay, so that's nearly done. It's always this last executing command boot A 474 and so many zeros that does kind of pause for a while. It's nothing to be concerned about. I've seen it happen on everybody else's Super Nintendo minis. So once these mods have applied, I think what I will do is I will just have a quick look at the Super Nintendo in terms of functionality. I'm going to boot to it and see what state we're in. We should have the stock 21 games on there, but I'm hoping that we also have the controller reset. So I'll just wait for the done now. Okay, that's great. Hopefully you can see that. So okay, that's interesting. I'm just going to turn it off here and then back on. It didn't appear from the menu at the top there to be modded, but maybe it's just applied the HMods. No. So from what I can see from the legal notice, at the very top it doesn't mention Hakchi at all. So just adding the HMods isn't doing anything. It's not enabling the down and select to reboot. As you can see, that's just booting the game. So let's make that modification so that we can hit down and select to be able to reboot the SNES instead of having to get up off the sofa and do that. So what we need to do next is we want to, in Hakchi 2.21f, let's check the controller hack is set with reset a button with a button combination. It is. You can change the reset combination. I prefer the standard down and select. All we have to do is go to Kernel and flash custom kernel. And then OK that. So it wants me to put the Nintendo in FEL mode, so I'm going to hold down reset and turn the power on, keeping reset held down until the computer recognizes the device is in FEL mode and starts to flash it with the custom kernel. There we go. So at this point we still haven't added any games. All we've been doing is kind of preparing the stock Nintendo kernel with some modifications to play other games, emulators, RetroArch, and also now making sure that we're applying the kernel so we can use shortcuts like down and select to reset the Nintendo instead of having to press the reset button on the hardware itself. So this flashing the kernel, this is one of the important stages. But I think when you're doing anything like this, it's important that you take your time. You know, watch plenty of YouTube videos, not just mine, but go and watch some from Kylan K. He has some ones. He's actually the author of the USB modification. He's adapted the code from Mad Monkey. Had lots of help from Dan the Man and other people. So, you know, if you wanted to add USB modification, make sure you watch a few videos beforehand. Okay, looks like it's starting to finish off the process now. Should this video be completely successful without any mistakes, or without many mistakes, I'll make sure I put all the links to the files. I'll put all of those underneath the video. Okay. We know that it's modded because it says so right there. So, successful so far. We will start Super Metroid again, but this time we'll press down and select. So clearly we have a modded Super Nintendo now, capable of you know, ready for adding new games. But we're not going to add new games to it. I'm just going to shut that down and go back to the PC. I don't really want to add any other content to the internal memory other than the 21 games that's already there. You know, we've verified now that the Super Nintendo is modded. It's got the Genesis mod on there, you know, everything we could want. We're at that stage. If we wanted to be sure, yeah, we could load some ROMs to the internal memory and verify that they correctly boot up. And, you know, that's not a problem, but I'm pretty sure that we have a modded system how we want it right now. The 7-zip was applied, which I didn't do in my previous video, and the font fix was applied, again, not done in the previous video. And as well as that, I've added all of those emulators in there, at all of those cores. So now while we're in here, actually, the last thing we want to do now that we've got the Super Nintendo how we want it, we want to dump the kernel. Now, you've already dumped the factory kernel at the start of this video. So what we now need to do is we need to put our factory dump kernel somewhere safe, because it's in the way of the fresh dump. So let's go off and get it. Bring that into view. There it is, kernel SNES.img 2670. That's the size of it. I'm going to rename that, because if I don't rename it, it'll either copy over the top or it won't copy at all because it'll detect the original. So I'm going to put original. There we go. Type in at an angle, sorry. Okay, so that's our original. We've got it backed up in many other places. So coming back to Hakchi, we tell it to dump the kernel. Now this is going to dump the modified kernel. This is critical, the modified kernel with all of those additional things that we wanted. So, you know, 7-zip modification, Genesis, let's dump that. I'll put the SNES in file mode. Again, holding down reset and turning the power on. So this is really the bit that differs from my previous video. I've prepared the Super Nintendo before. Last time I used just the stock, and although I were able to play Super Nintendo games on the external USB drive, they had to be uncompressed, and therefore it took an awful long time transferring all 700 and however many games I've got onto the external drive. But now I've added the tiny 7-zip, so I'll be able to launch compressed Super Nintendo games and other console games from the external drive. Okay, so this is saying it can't unpack the RAM disk at that. It's come up with an error. Let me go and check if it actually made the dump. No, it didn't. So I'm just going to make this window a bit smaller and give it another go. So I will say dump kernel. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use this kernel as the basis of our USB mod, because once we apply the USB mod, it becomes very, or at least more difficult to add modifications on top of that. It's still come up with an error, which, you know, it's great. It really slows us down and means it bores you a little bit more. So what can we do? At this point, obviously, there's something about this kernel that isn't liked. It's not dumping. So the only choice we have is to go back to factory and do it all again. So I've renamed my original kernel, and I'm going to have to flash the factory kernel again. So now we're going back. We've wasted time here. I've no idea what it was about the options that I selected, the modifications that I selected that it didn't like, but sure enough, we're returning back to factory settings. Okay, that thinks it's done. Just to confirm that, we'll boot it. Okay, so looking at that, let's check and see if it's back. Yeah, it doesn't mention that it's been modded. And down and select doesn't seem to be working. Okay, so we'll return back to the desktop and we'll give it another go. So again, I want to flash. I'm going to do it in a slightly different order this time. I'm going to flash a custom kernel. I'll put it in fell mode. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to rename that kernel. I don't want to lose it, although I have got it elsewhere. Now you can actually see that by flashing a custom kernel, it has put the original kernel in the dump folder. And it does seem that this is the way that, you know, there's no absolutely guaranteed way of getting it right first time. You have to try and try and try again until you get the outcome that you want. But yeah, even for me right there, just trying to dump the kernel once it was a custom kernel, it wasn't happening. Okay. So it's now telling me that I can upload games. But I don't want to do that right now. I just want to verify that the Nintendo has the custom kernel on there. We do that by going into the legal notices, and it says that it's a modded system, not for resale. And if we want, we can check that the down and select works, which it does, which is great. So once again, I've no idea whether or not those modifications are still on there. So I'm just going to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing here. Install extra modules. They don't seem to be on there, so we better put them in. We need the tiny 7-zip. We need the font fix. Hopefully you can see them just about on screen. I might zoom in a little bit more. I'm also going to, last time it didn't work, no idea why. I'm going to leave the Saturn emulator off there because it's not really powerful enough to run it. I will probably just go up through these. Quake, Dual Link, Atari 2600. I don't really want to play those. Okay, the SNES 9X 2010 I'll definitely have. I'm going to put the RetroArch core on there that comes with Nintendo support. I'll put Pico Drive on there because I've got some 32X games. I'm going to leave off the PlayStation support for now, although it should be fine putting that on. MGBA, I'll have that. A Glupin for the 64 games. Genesis plus GX. Okay, that's it. Let me just put those on that. And there we go. I'm just going to reboot in file mode. While I'm at it, I'll just clean up the dump folder because we know we've already got the original one there. Now, without putting some ROMs onto the internal memory, we're not able to check whether or not the HMODs are applied properly. Hopefully when this is complete, we'll just assume that the HMODs have been applied and everything's going to be good. Okay. Again, just force of habit, check that the Nintendo is correctly working when you've applied anything. Still modded, game still boot, and soft reset works. That's fine. So, as I tried before, I'm going to try once more. Let's go to dump kernel, and hopefully we can dump that kernel that contains all the modifications that we want to carry through to the USB mod. Got my fingers crossed now. Okay, can't unpack RAM disk at com cluster hackchi GUI. It goes on with itself, and then it talks about a path, users, Daniel, documents, GitHub. You know, to me, this is an issue. It's not an issue with anything I'm doing. It seems to be talking about a document that doesn't exist for a user called Daniel on his PC. I suspect this is Dan the Man. Dan the Man, if you come across this video, clearly this error's got something to do with you, and it's stopping me progressing from here. But nevertheless, I'm just going to work with what I've got and see if it works. So I'm at the same point I were 10 minutes ago. I'm going to assume that the original kernel is going to be good enough. So let's see. Hopefully it will be. I do have a USB drive and on the go, all prepared. Let's see if that works. Okay, so we're going to close down Hackcheat 2. And we're going to open up Hackcheat GUI for the USB flash. And what we're looking at doing is putting the dump of the original. I would put the dump of the modified version in there, but I'm going to put the dump of the original in. Hopefully it'll still work, but I don't know. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to run the Hackcheat GUI. Now, according to Kyland K, he's got an easy way to remember what you're supposed to do, which is seriously don't you effing remember me. Seriously is to put the stock kernel in the dump folder, which we've done here. I will zoom in at this point and just get everything in shot. So there it is, stock kernel's in there. Then you launch the here. So seriously, come on, just need to turn my Nintendo off. And then get it into file mode. Now you need to be in file mode when using this. If you don't, it will remind you to do that. So I'm just booting the Nintendo now. File mode with this pressed down. Okay, so we've got stock kernel. Now don't, that's D, dump. And the interesting thing is, if it's dumping the kernel, for me, that means it's taking the kernel from the Nintendo. So I'm not sure why we needed stock. That's a question that we'd have to ask Kyland K. I always assumed that you needed to provide the kernel that you have modified, not the stock kernel. Otherwise, why are you providing the stock kernel? What's it doing with the stock kernel? So don't, and then U, which was unpack. Effing, which is flash. Yep. Again, seriously, don't you effing remember me. All of the instructions for this process are actually inside the KMFD manic folder in the dependencies and extras, in the advanced users, and there is an expandable storage cheat sheet right there. And the cheat sheet basically goes through these steps where it says, seriously, don't you effing remember me. And it's just an easy way of remembering what options to do for this USB mod. Stock kernel, dump kernel, unpack kernel, flash kernel, rebuild kernel, and memboot. So it's all the kernel options. So it's just finishing the flash now. And all we have to do is remember me, which will be rebuild and memboot. So let's rebuild the kernel image and then memboot. So my worry about this is that although we've applied everything using Hackcheat 2 from Dan the Man, we applied the soft reset using the controller, we applied all those H mods. We've started with the stock kernel. I mean, that is what KMFD Manix says we should do, start with the stock kernel. In fact, it's right in this file here. You know, it says stock kernel, so must work. Okay, looks like we're done. So let's go back to the Super Nintendo and see what we have. Okay, it is a modded system. It does soft boot. I'm just going to turn it off and back on again. Again, we've not plugged in any... Oh, sorry about that, I'll just zoom out. We've not plugged in any USB drive yet. We're just verifying that the USB modification has been done. We know it's been done because we should see a Hakchi logo up on boot. And because we don't have any USB drive plugged in, it goes to the internal memory, to which I haven't added anything to the internal memory apart from the stock 21 games. Okay, let's turn that off now. Now, I've already performed the next step, which is to plug in the USB hardware. There we go, I'm just keeping it steady with some blue tack. So the USB hardware's in. That USB is loaded with some games, and then turn on. So yeah, it has booted to the external. I happen to know I see 3 errors occurred. That's great. I see 2 error. Your settings have been reset. Okay. Now, more C3 errors, C2 errors, C7 error, C3, C2, C7. Let's try the Genesis game. No, it certainly doesn't like that, does it? So that is interesting, that it's not running any of these games. So even for me, who, you know, somebody who's done this many times, it's still not running fine. It still doesn't work flawlessly as it should. You know, I don't know what to say. This USB stick is the same USB stick that worked previously. Uninstall SNES and try again. Okay. Thanks for the comment there. I didn't quite see whose name it was, but... Okay. So I'm just going to switch back over to the PC. Now, when you say uninstall SNES, do you mean remove all traces of Hakchi 2? Is that what you mean? You want me to uninstall and try again? I mean, that's what the instructions say. You know, keep doing it, go back, keep doing it. But yeah, let's try this then. Hakchi 2, let's open it. I know, it's so annoying. If you've done this yourself, you'll know how annoying it is. It's not good. So, uninstall. No kernel dump found. Well, that's because it wants my kernel dump, and we know that that should be in the dump folder. So let's rename that and try again. Uninstall. Yeah. Of course, we can't do anything while we've got this on-the-go adapter in. We have to remove the on-the-go adapter to enter fail mode. So I'll just plug that back in. And enter fail mode there. The problem is we're back at the beginning again, and that's 50 minutes of this this video wasted. But I guess if it helps somebody else know that they're not alone and that you just have to keep trying, so be it. So I noticed that obviously you're watching this live. So have you actually attempted to do this previously? I mean, certainly I've done it many times. Not with this particular release of the USB hack. With previous releases, so it could be about something about this release that's messed up. It's so frustrating. So according to all the instructions, and I will just bring those instructions back up on the expandable storage, it says there, just thanks to everyone who's done it. If you want to use folders, do your folder setup. It says uninstall Hachi2. Next, install the HMods you want to use, including the following ones, and it mentions FontFix and Tiny 7ZX Dynamic HMod, which is fair enough. It says if you have any of the issues with these HMods, just uninstall them and simplify characters. No, right, okay, yeah. Fine. That's great, but he's not talking about anything. I'm just reading these here. He's only talking about installing 2 HMods. He says he does say install the HMods you want to use, including these following 2, which I think is what I did last time. So again, it's factory reset now. We double check. Just zoom out. Yep, there's certainly no modified console, and down and select does not reset. So back here, according to the instructions, it says we've uninstalled Hachi2 completely. It says next install the HMods you want to use, including the following 2. Okay, then I will do. So modules. There we go. Install extra modules. Of course, Tiny 7-zip. We also put the FontFix in there. I am going to put, again, the same as that I've had previously in previous builds. SNES 9X, we'll have that. Because we want to be able to play the ROMs that the official Nintendo emulator doesn't work with. RetroArch we need for sure. Pico Drive. I'm going to put Glupin 64 on there. Genesis Plus. Did I miss MGBA? I did miss MGBA. Let's get that in there. Okay. Let's do that. Starting again. So it's currently factory. And the question is, what will it be next? Will this apply the soft reset and say that it's a modded system in the legal notices? Okay. Keeps you hanging on this last command. But according to the instructions, we've installed the Hmod GUs, including the 2. So just be very careful. Okay. We followed it all the way up to this. Okay. And next it's telling us about those word association steps. Okay, it says it's done. I'll double check it's done. Well, it doesn't look like a modded system anymore, so I'm not sure I'll be too pleased with this. So down and select isn't working yet. So that's very strange that the official instructions are missing something. And I think the official instructions are missing the fact that you have to, it's not just about installing the Hmod you want. Uninstall, install the Hmod you want to use, and then, come on, flash custom kernel. You have to flash a custom kernel. Otherwise, how can you use down and select to reboot? So I'll give that a go. Or maybe you're not allowed to flash a custom kernel. Maybe that's where the problem is. But I've done it in the past and it worked fine. But we'll try again. Okay. Yeah, I get you just adding one or two games for each system, that's fine. I do have over 700 games, but I've got a few for each system, so I'll just copy those over. So while this is doing with the kernel, I'll just prepare that USB drive with those few games. I've already got lots copied over, by the way. I do have many copied over, but if you just want to see a few, that's fine. So do you want me to use the USB memory stick that has everything copied over already, or do you want me to copy over a few just to show you what copying files looks like? As you can see in the Hatchy Games folder, there's lots. So I think what I'll do is I'll just jump straight to there. I won't do any copying of games because those are uncompressed games. They should work without any issues. And I've also got the compressed games as well on there in a separate folder. But in terms of you know, content on your USB stick, that's completely separate from any of the flashing. It is just dragging and dropping files either manually, or you can use Hakchi 2 to export the files and folders. And I don't think there's any reason why they should work any differently from release to release. Okay, well, it says I can upload some. I guess, you know, if let's just find out if that's modded, if it's working. Yeah, it's a modded system, not for resale. Yep, that works fine. What have we got there? Please don't download more games. 1 to 2 games, thanks. Okay. Well, I wouldn't worry about downloading the games. I've already got them all, and they're already on the USB, so I don't have to do that. So if you want me to hurry up, that's fine. It's very, very simple. We go from this point now. Apparently, we should put the stock firmware. I keep trying to dump. Oh, I keep trying to dump the custom firmware. So this is the original. I know it's the original because of the file size. File size is there. If we can get it over this way. There we go. 2.6 meg. So I'm just going to ask it to dump this kernel. So just once again, I don't have to worry about the games at all. The games are already on the USB drive. Genesis games, Super Nintendo games, NES games. I think what I'll do here is I will just reinstate my original folder structure of Hakchi. Okay, so that was all Super Nintendo once. Can you use an external hard disk? Not sure about that. It'd be nice to use a terabyte, yeah. I'm sure you get plenty of ROMs on there. You'd have to try, is the answer. As far as I'm aware, people who have tried USB 3 devices, they've had some success. But some people like myself have not had success. That just failed. So it's not possible to dump the customized kernel. So we're just going to go straight to it. We're going to do exactly what we've been told to do by Kyle and Kate, and we're going to go to the GUI. We've got the dump in here, the kernel image. Okay, that's interesting. That is very interesting. So this is the original one, and that is what it's created itself. So we're at a point of when he tells us to put the stock firmware, it's here in the instructions. Kyle and Kay says stock kernel. He wants the stock kernel putting in the dump folder. So let's remove the kernel, or at least rename the kernel new USB, whatever, it doesn't matter. This is my stock kernel, but what does he want me to call it? It's a good question. If I don't call it anything, will it complain? Will it not complain? Let's go see what Kyle and Kay says. He has a cheat sheet, but I'm going to go back to the official one. Okay. Okay, back up, blah, blah, blah. On issues and tested. Supply your own kernel as kernel image. Okay, makes sense. So back to his. He wants me to call my original kernel, which we know is the 2.67 megabyte one. Gigabytes, I wish. He wants me to call that kernel. It's not on the cheat sheet. I think it's important. Okay, and then he wants us to flash. So he's saying seriously, which is the stock I've done. I don't. You effing, and this is a little bit more time consuming. Okay, next up is Remember and then me. Oh, this is some long drawn out video. I can kind of see what everybody's talking about now about it being annoying. If you don't have patience, it's rebuild. The weird thing is the last release worked flawlessly every time for me, and now Memboot. It's just this release that's had some problems. Or maybe I'm not doing it perfectly right. Clearly. I guess we could blame user error. Okay, that's it done, apparently. Now, it looks like it's probably already started the boot process, so it's going to boot to the internal memory because there's no USB plugged in, because you can't have a USB plugged in when you're flashing. So I'll just turn off that. But we did see the Hatchy Boot logo, so that's at least a start. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to plug the micro USB power into the on-the-go. I'll take the games which are already on here. They are only SNES at this time. Sorry, what? Could you repeat that last one? Just let me have a look. See if it comes up. So anyway, I'm just going to plug the Super Nintendo games in there. That's all that's on the external right now. I do have another folder that I can just rename, and it'll immediately show the Genesis games. So this shouldn't take a second. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, so be it. Okay, well that's good. This is my previous setup that I had with all of the USA collection and just the exclusive from the PAL area. All separated out into folders. And hopefully these were all compressed as well. Yeah, it's good. It is good. Just let me... So this, it has never been a problem getting the games on there. What's been a problem is these errors, these C7 errors. So clearly that's working fine. The reboot's working. That's good. Okay, so right now you can see that externally everything's working fine. I've got plenty of games on there. Ah, okay. You want to know about creating folders? That's fine. I will cover that. I'll make the video a little bit longer for you. Okay, so obviously I've got the PAL ones here as well. I just want to show you that PAL ROMs work. So just play one of them. Okay, so you can clearly see that the ROMs work fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is show you a bit more about the USB folder structure. Now, clearly Super Nintendo ROMs are playing, but during that entire 60-minute process, you saw me copy across the mods to make Genesis games work. I just want to make sure those Genesis games are working. No, I'm okay. I've probably got another 10 or 15 minutes. So let me just check that Genesis games are working first, because I don't want to go through the entire folder structure creation if the initial mod isn't working perfectly. Okay, so on the external drive, I had two Hakchi folders. In fact, just let me name it with one underscore. You'll have to forgive me because I can't always see any messages that are being typed in if I'm not looking at the camera screen. Okay, so now that that's done in here, I've got games that have Mega Drive ones on, so plug it in. Plug it in and switch. There we go. Okay, so this is looking slightly different to the other folder that you would have seen. This was my latest attempt at external folders. These are all uncompressed mods, so I'm going to look at this one because there's a 6-pack for Genesis games not far from the start. This should be using RetroArch. It is using RetroArch. So we have a successfully modified Super Nintendo now. So everything that I've done has worked. The most important thing that you're asking, the person who's watching this live is asking, and also other people will want to know, is folder structure. So let's go back to Hakchi. In fact, let me turn off my Super Nintendo and show you the folder structure on there. Okay, so again, this is just a micro USB. Just inside there. And I'm using 32 gig. So the folder structure actually is all actually created using the Hakchi 2 software from Dan the Man. So I'm just going to zoom in on this now and launch it. Now at the moment, there we go. So there's my USB drive. So what I'm going to do is I am going to Okay, I'm going to recreate this Hatchy folder. So these effectively won't exist because they'll be renamed. So on your USB, you need to create a Hatchy folder, and then inside that folder you need to create a games and a saves. Yeah, it helps if you type in properly. Okay. yeah. This is a third folder. Obviously, I've tried many times. I will actually revert back to one of the old ones later, but this is just for you guys about the folder structure. So the games. This is where all the games are going to live, and they'll be put in there automatically by the Hatchy 2 software. And the saves folder is going to be used by the custom firmware to put all the saves on the external. So that's it. So let's just move that out of the way. Let's launch Hatchy 2 by Dan the Man. And you'll notice, first of all, that, just zoom out very slightly. There we go. You'll notice that it's just ticking the original games. So we'll untick them because they're already on the internal memory. We want to put some games on now on the external. So I've got a folder, bring that down. I've got a folder full of ROMs. So I guess, do you want to see Genesis, N64? I have, what else have I got there? 32X games on there. Just give me one of those. I guess it doesn't really matter, does it? So I'll put a 32X on there because I don't think I tried it initially. So in a nutshell, you drag and drop a 32X game on there. Now, this was called, here it is, Shadow Squadron underscore 32X, and then 32X extension. You can then browse Google. If you've used Hatchy before, I know I'm covering old ground. You can Google an image and it'll try and go off and find it. And then you can pick the image that you want to use for that particular ROM. But I've already got images here, so you can just drag and drop your image on top. Also, let's put an N64 game on there. That's Wave Race. And then I'll put the box art on there as well. Then you might want to put, what have I got here? Oh, I've got a game called Bonk, which is a PC Engine game. In fact, I don't think I put a PC... I missed off that HMod, didn't I? So yeah, I didn't put any PC Engine emulator on there. That's a shame. I've got a load of Genesis games here, so I might just throw a Genesis game on there. Let me see. What is that? We're looking for something a bit more recognisable. Okay, that'll do. This is just Batman. Okay. So you can add games. Most important thing you need to do is go to the page and folder structure and choose custom, show folder management every time. The reason being is you're going to have more than 3 games on here and you're going to want to separate them out. So I'm going to separate them into, this one's a Mega Drive or a Genesis title, 32X and N64. So all I do is hold down Shift on my keyboard and click on Synchronize Selected Games with SNES Mini. It then wants you to pick a folder where you can actually export the folder structure to. Feel free. You know I've got my other folders. This is the third one. Go to the Hatchy folder and identify the games folder. So that is your SD card or USB drive Hatchy games folder. Okay, so you can either have them all in your root, but obviously if you've got a lot of games you won't want to do that, or you can start to make some folders. So I'm going to click on it 3 times and I'm going to make 3 folders. I'm going to call the first one 32X. I'm going to call the second one Genesis. And the third one, I think we had an N64 game, didn't we? N64. And then you simply drag and drop the ROMs into the folders that you want. Like that. Okay. It might be helpful as well, just for aesthetics, that you click on the folder here, 32X, and you browse. So where it says 32X, I think it was at the top. Yeah, 32X with a Mega Drive, I think, for my region. A Genesis, I'm going to pick the Mega Drive again, and the N64, I'll pick the N64. Okay, so we're going to have 3 folders in the root. And when you click on OK, it will export those 3 games directly to the USB stick. As you can see, it's opened the folder on the USB stick right there. So now that that's been done, all I need to do is take out the USB stick and put it in the SNES Mini and boot it, which I'm going to do now. So eject, put it in, change input, boot. I think because there hasn't been a Hakchi folder there before, it's recognised it and asked me to choose a language. Now that's interesting. Did I not put that game in? Ah, it's gone into one of the folders. Ah, I see what it's done. So I've got 3 folders there. Now, obviously, the menu usually has many more icons in there, but each folder will have 1 game in. So this is the 32X game. So if you want to store that save point, you can do. Come out of it. Go into the Genesis game. Just 1 here, Batman. I think we've already seen things working, so. So I'm just showing you that those save states definitely end up in the correct folder as well. N64. Now I thought I put an N64 emulator on there, so it might be the actual extension name that's not correct. So let me just double check on that. All I have to do is switch the Super Nintendo off, take out the USB. I've got a suspicion that the extension for Wave Race was Z64, which I'm going to double check now in Hakchi. Now you can't see unless it's at the end here. Yeah, Z64 7-zip. What I'm going to try adding one that's a V64. I'm just wondering which ones they were now. Okay, so F-Zero works, I know. Copying that in. Okay, copy that box art with it. When you click Shift and Synchronize, it then will tell you that there are new games. So again, I'm telling it where to put them in the games folder. New games are in the unsorted. Sure enough, F-Zero-X is there. I'm copying it to the N64 folder. I remove the unsorted, so keep it nice and clean. So the N64 folder now has 2 games in. Wave Race, which didn't work, was a Z64 format, and F-Zero, which was an .N64 file extension. Okay, it says the selected folder isn't empty, and then done. Now hopefully that means that it has copied it anyway. So let's have a look in games. It doesn't look like it has. Now this is an issue that we faced in the previous release of this software, where you had to actually remove the contents of the Hakchi Games folder. And then, only then, can you synchronize, and it'll synchronize without a problem. Which is lame, in fairness. I know Dan the Man's done a great job in making this export tool work, but you should be able to, you see there's now 2 in there in this folder. So okay, let's export, let's extract the USB. Let's put it into the SNES Mini. And let's boot. Because I'm absolutely sure I copied over the HMod for Glupin, I think it was, which was an N64 emulation. Cool. Now we've got 2 games. Let's try F-Zero X. Yep, that's working fine. So you need to be careful with the file extensions then of your files that you're putting in there. Make sure you put the correct file extension that's supported by the core. Yep, it's quite easy, I agree. But obviously I'm mainly using my... I'll just turn this off and go back to the desktop and show you where I were up to. So what I've done for you, if you're watching this, I focused on the full set. And again, this is a thank you for watching this far. So thank you very much for your congratulations and everything. But I've actually put the contents of the USB drive with all the Super Nintendo games in. I've put that somewhere. And I think in one of my videos that's on my channel, it's actually in the description. You just need to be clever and find out which one. But obviously, I don't want to go across any grey areas and have a knock at my door. So yeah, you will find the link to these. But here's what I've got. So let's see. You can see my screen. So what you want to do, you want to go to Hakchi. That's right. And the games. SNES folder is where everything lives. If that's empty, then when you launch Hakchi, which I'm going to launch it now, there are no games in there. It's empty. So just let me zoom in on that and show you. No games in. But if somebody has kindly provided a games folder, which I have around here, I'm just going to drag it from my desktop. Okay, that's going a bit slower than I thought, even though it's the same drive. It says it's moved it, does it? Yeah, all the folders are in there. And you restart Hakchi, you'd have all of the games in there. So I think there's something like 700 games or something like that in there. And then you can choose to export them to your USB stick. So as you know, my USB stick, if I take it out, and just wait for it to pop up. Now you can choose whether to compress these or not. I would definitely recommend compressing all the games, simply because it takes a long time to copy this many games over to the USB device, regardless of what device it is. So just let me go up to the home. Okay. And I'm just going to click on compress selected games. Again, that takes time to compress, but that's what you should do. You should compress the games. 7-zip a file, a fine. So that's what you want to do. Just going back now to my Hakchi folder. Obviously, we had the new one, which only had a few games in from a few different emulators. We had in the previous one. I'm just looking to see which one this is. Yeah, that looks more like the one of my original. And then we had this feeble attempt. Yeah, I can see it doesn't have many saves in there, so that's the one that I don't want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the one that I think has all my games in the root. And that's it. And then I'm back to normal then. I can go off and play all of my Super Nintendo games externally. Oh, great. The nice thing about this is, although it's all the games that I had from like a week ago when I did this originally, the font has now been fixed. So if you look, there's like a little hashtag or a pound sign, if they call that in the States, just up at the top here. That wasn't there. The letter U as well, the capital letter U was missing. So I just want to check if that's in there as well. Oh, that is fantastic. So great, I can get on with things now. So back in, play one of my favourites. Well, I hope this has been useful. You've watched it live, thank you very much. I could say subscribe, but hey, you know, you either will or you won't, so whatever. Just enjoy yourself. Get out there, flash it. If it goes wrong, go back to factory firmware, go back to stock. You know, that's all you can do. Even to somebody who's done this probably more than 20 times now, things still go wrong. And you've just got to say, well, it's gone wrong. Let's go back. Oh, he got one hit in. And another. And another. Wow. Wow. I can't believe it. It's because I'm distracted, clearly. Cheeky little... Oh, there we go. Got him. Thanks for watching, guys. Go off and do this yourself. Thank you. Bye-bye.